What is an escritura and how do I get the so-called transfer deed reviewed before the closing of a real estate transaction in Brazil? Hello there, my name is Luciano Oliveira. I am a Brazilian attorney. So escritura in Portuguese means transfer deed, and escritura is also the act or the closing when the seller and the buyer are gonna meet and sign the document, the transfer deed, or again the escritura. That's gonna be the legal act of transferring the ownership from the seller to the buyer. At our firm, we always review the transfer deed prior to the closing, so when our client attends the closing, they know exactly what they're gonna sign, and we have reviewed the language and all of the representations that are gonna be included in the transfer deed. This is particularly important because the escritura, the transfer deed, is gonna bring the certificates of clearance for this property to be conveyed to the buyer, and if there are defects with the certificates of clearance, these defects, they are gonna be reviewed, they are gonna be described in the transfer deed. So that's when we know if there is something wrong that we couldn't know before because the certificate of clearance had not been delivered. But again, at that point in time, the certificate of clearance is going to be mandatory to be delivered to the registry. And if they have any issues, if they have any appointments, for instance, for unpaid taxes or for problems with the property, this is going to show on the certificates of clearance, and it's going to be indicated in the transfer deed in the escritura. Thus, extremely important to review the escritura text up front before the buyer actually attends the closing. So the escritura actually resembles a purchase agreement. It tells who's the seller, who's the buyer. It talks about the property description as per the deed. It tells how much the amount being paid is, and it gives other key information, because the purpose of the escritura is not only record the transaction from a legal point of view, but is also to give notice to other potential buyers. Once the escritura is done, it is in theory searchable by other parties who may be interested in buying the property, but then if they do the search, they are going to realize that this property was sold to the buyer already. Important to note, escritura is not the same thing as deed. It's pretty common Brazilians who do not really understand real estate transactions to say, oh, this property doesn't have escritura. There are actually meaning title, but the title or deed, it's actually another document that's going to be issued later on after the escritura. So first comes the escritura, and in a second stage, the escritura is going to be used to generate the actual title or deed. Another important reason for you to ask the escritura text to be reviewed up front is so the cartório knows that you are being assisted by an attorney. As you may imagine, registries, they are always busy, they are always handling multiple transactions at the same time, and every time that you ask the escritura text up front to be reviewed, this is going to give notice to the cartório that you are being supported by an attorney, and then the cartório is going to be more careful in terms of how they are going to handle the certificates of clearance, if the descriptions for the property are accurate, if the names and personal information for the buyers and the sellers are well described, and you're going to have an additional layer of safety for your transaction just because you are asking for the text for the transfer deed escritura before you actually attend the closing. I hope this information was helpful. If it was, please like our video so other people can find it, and follow us for more tips.